did you want to do a little?
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick intro for you. Okay, today we are learning about Agile ID and one software company's journey to keep ahead. Our presenter is Noël Zykowski, and she will be discussing a variety of issues that her company went through as they were making some differences to their training processes. Noël, let's turn it over to you.
Hi, sure thing. Hey, everybody. I see Kendra joined. Welcome. Hopefully we'll have a few more join. I believe that this session is going to be recorded as well to share with those that aren't able to join. As Robin said, my name is Noël Zykowski, and I've got a couple of things I just wanted to share with you guys about our journey and the things we learned and steps we took in order to tackle some of the biggest things we've ever faced here as a training team. So I've got just a couple of slides to kind of work through here, give you guys some visuals. So I think we had a little bit about me. I am certified through the Association of Talent Development, aka the ATD, as an associate professional in talent development. That means I know how to train, I know how to evaluate systems, instructional design, etc. And I work for a company called Workforce Software. And what my company does is provide a flexible cloud-based solution, so software for our customers that really handles ever-changing business needs, where we're equipping those organizations to handle reduction in labor costs, compliance for employee work, and also boosting employee engagement, which in instructional design we know that's a key thing as well, that engagement piece. And we do that through providing different solutions for companies to have their employees have more control and self-service over their time and their schedules. And so here I have a role called Global Training and Education Manager. And essentially what that lets me do is I get to play with everything. I have my hands on instructional design, instructor-led training delivery, our schedule worldwide, and I get to help develop and deliver training programs to our employees, to our partners, and our customers on our software solutions. So, so that means there's a pretty wide touch of things I get to do and also things impacted by change. Some key words in that introduction there, you guys might have caught flexible, ever-changing, and these kinds of things when we're talking about our product also means I'm dealing with that on the training side of that ever-changing product. And what does that look like to impact my ever-changing world of instructional design and delivery of training programs for all of our people, our different audiences. So I wanted to share this story because I have a small but very mighty team of instructional designers and a couple of technical trainers to educate the entire world. And just over a year ago, we were really facing one of the largest projects we have ever seen, and one of the largest product launches at our company that we've ever seen. And so it made me think a little bit of this David and Goliath of like, how will we ever tackle this? How are we going to approach it? It was a conundrum we kind of kept circling on. And really we knew that when this would come, it would impact everything we had ever built. And we knew that not only do we have to go back and update things, but we're going to have to create new training and material and content for people to learn about this new product, this new way of things, change management in there, all sorts of fun stuff. So as we were looking at this, we're like, okay, we're facing this Goliath of a project. We need, I think of David and Goliath, we need that David to rally behind and figure out, well, what is that? And we heard about Agile. Our product teams here that were developing had done this big process to switch to Agile development, and it sounded really great because they were talking more and they were putting out more, and it seemed like they were doing things faster, and this was just the new way of things. And so we said, great, what does that look like for our team? How can we get ahead of these changes? And so looking at needing to go Agile, we didn't really know what that meant for us. We didn't know how to approach it. So we started to look at our product development team. We started to try to dig in and learn a little bit more about Agile. Now, before I continue our story, I've done a little bit of structuring here to this, where I'm going to talk about what waterfall is versus Agile, what those things mean, different Agile methodologies, SAM, Llama, etc. And then really, how did we get to a point where we were able to do something with this, and what was our end result? I also pulled together some resources for you guys that I'm happy to share this slide deck along with the presentation that has clickable links for you to be able to dive into the topic a little bit more. The other thing is, please feel free to ask me. I will provide answers, hopefully, the questions you have throughout the presentation here. I plan to really talk on this and share for maybe about 30 minutes or so. And then the rest of our time together can also be Q&A at the end if you guys have anything. So when it comes to this approach here, we had in instructional design, we have ADDIE, analyze, then we design, then we develop, then we implement, and then we evaluate. And this is a pretty linear approach, which allows us to put together a great well-designed product and deliver a final product. The challenge with this is that when working with our software, we were dealing with different product updates and releases on different schedules. One area may be updated every 6 weeks. Another area is updated every quarter. Another area is updated as needed. And our linear approach to designing these resulted in us delivering training 4, 6, 8 weeks or more after a release was out and after people were already using it. So as we take a look at this is waterfall, just step by step by step. A way that people like to think about this, and there's an analogy out there, is it's like you have a project to build a bus. And you get together and you get all your specs and define what this bus needs to look like and what it needs to do. And then you start building it, and you're 2 weeks into the project, and the project sponsor stops by and says, hey, I want to test drive the bus. And we say, well, no, it's not ready yet. I've just got the perfect engine together, and I've got this over here and this. And they're like, great, can I test drive it? No, not yet. Look at this chrome over here. This is going to be great. And so we keep showing the design of this and what it'll be. And then we finally deliver this amazing bus. And as that stakeholder comes in, they say, hey, this looks pretty nice, but the steering wheel, actually, we forgot to tell you that we're going to be doing this in another country, and the steering wheel needs to actually be on the other side. And then where's your project at? You got to think of all the changes and the things, and that's kind of what can happen with waterfall. We think we've got it. We go away for several weeks. We develop training, and we go, here you go, guys. Here it is. And they say, oh, except can we tweak this, and can we change this? And you already have your finals in, and it becomes a much more significant update. I'm even thinking of this with my daughter who wants to play hockey. And so learning to play hockey requires learning to skate on ice. And that requires equipment and lessons and months of a process that we're working through. And what I don't know in the end is she even going to like playing hockey? So this is where we get to Agile, where maybe I could have just thrown my daughter onto the ice with a hockey stick and hey, go have some fun, see if you even like the game. Coming back to our bus analogy, perhaps at the beginning we would have gathered what we needed, and 2 weeks in we would have had a basic frame and a basic engine to have our project people come in and actually test drive it and say, oh yeah, you know, this is cool. Can we now do this, make it amphibious, or tweak this, or add a wheel? And it becomes much easier for us to make changes and change the course of where we're going when we approach something via Agile. And that doesn't mean ADDIE goes away with Agile. I have a graphic up on here. Agile just means you're breaking ADDIE down into smaller chunks. And you're doing your analysis, you're doing your design, you're doing your development, and you put out a piece. You implement it, you evaluate it, and then you rinse and repeat. Take that, analyze what's going on, design, develop, okay, next one, next piece. In the software world, this is called iterations. And so when we look at basic Agile, and while I've got this example up here, if you look at all of the software stuff out there about Agile, it is not a perfect fit for coming back into instructional design realm. There are things that don't make sense or need to be tweaked in order for us to what some may call more rapidly develop, or really we're just putting out smaller chunks, which looks like we're doing things faster. Speaking of which, Agile does not ever equate to doing things faster. That's a common misconception. So just because you switch to an Agile methodology doesn't mean you're going to get more done faster. Things may actually go at the same pace, but as I get in a little bit later, I'll show you what the benefits are that we have had from choosing an Agile methodology for this. So with those different stories of building the bus, looking at that, the big thing from that is that your stakeholders, your project owners, those people are involved along the way. They're not at the beginning and the end. They are involved along every step of the way. And I know that sounds like that might be hard and that might be challenging, but especially if we struggle with getting SMEs and resources. And I'll tell you that if you're saying, hey, I'm going to have a product for you here, they're going to be more engaged. The other thing that I've really found adapting this Agile methodology is that it helps us avoid a big trap that in the learning development industry can be a little bit of a victim mentality. I can't do this project because I don't have the SMEs engaged, I don't have this. When we're looking at smaller chunks, smaller delivery, finding ways to get our stakeholders more engaged, Agile lets us ask, instead of saying, I can't do this, I can ask, well, what if we did this for our first piece? And then we could do this. And it lets us keep asking that question and move along in that design and delivery to give something that is not just some minimum viable product MVP, but really deliver something that's amazing regardless of your constraints. So I've really found that choosing this methodology has helped us support that as well. We're no longer thinking about the constraints hindering us, but helping guide us in our decisions. So lots of acronyms in the software world. I deal with these day in, day out. We see that too in some of the things that we work in as instructional designers. So ADDIE, if you hadn't been introduced to that, go out to Google. It is a pretty standard method that was developed by a university in Florida many, many years ago to kind of give structure for a program for the US Army, actually. And it still stands today as a solid background. We still do ADDIE, just in a different way. Now, when it comes to methodology, so how do we do ADDIE? How do we execute it? How does it work for us? The two big ones that are out there, and I'm sure there are others, there's SAM, which is the successive approximation model, and there's LLAMA, which is a lot like Agile management. And SAM and LLAMA are just two different ways to do Agile. I would really want to encourage you to explore these, explore other methodologies that might be a fit for you. And that's kind of what we did. So we said, all right, we have to do Agile, but what does that mean for instructional design? That's when we came across SAM and LLAMA. So, and to think about like my understanding is the general difference kind of between the two here is SAM doesn't talk too much about ADDIE. You're still doing it, just in a very different way using different words. It's coded to kind of pick up 3 solid iterations of a project, of a delivery that you're going to do. An iteration being like your first delivery, minimum viable product, like a PowerPoint. Your second delivery might be a video, et cetera, et cetera. So getting through 3 core iterations until you're to a final. It also has this smart start to be able to ask the right questions and start the project the right way. That is developed, so that whole process is developed by Allen Interactions. For LLAMA, that's developed by Torrance Learning, which also happens to be here in Michigan, where I'm based. And this really takes ADDIE, adds Agile, and makes effective instructional design work on it. So it tweaks Agile to fit ADDIE. And ultimately, where we landed was deciding that LLAMA was the direction for our team to go. We had to kind of pick, where were we going to go? So we landed on LLAMA because for us, when we evaluated it, it made the most sense. It was clear. Each time we read about the steps and the information, we saw different ways how we might put this into how we do things. So when it comes to this, it was completely new. We had a big job ahead of us as far as learning about really LLAMA, how we were truly going to implement it, doing it right, the right way, overhauling our processes, and also adding some new tools. So we I was the first one that went and attended a 2-day workshop on LLAMA training, and that was great. It was hands-on, and it got me bringing a project to there and starting to kind of work that into how we might do things and translating that already before leaving the workshop. Once I came back from the workshop, I recommended my team to also take that workshop. They were very excited for it. And what that looked like, though, still was changing the way we did things. And one of the things that we had to look at was if our product is updating so quickly, how do we know about it? We had to have a lot of internal conversations and adjustments to really find a way to have that healthy balance of getting our work done and also being embedded on our product teams. And one of the ways we did that was by having our product owners, our people who were responsible for their different areas, slot time into their Agile development. So they have things called sprints, like 2-week blocks of delivering something. And so now we were able to kind of sell how important it was to have training involved in that, so we could really stay at the forefront and be developing training along with developing our product. So it was really a first for all of us as we worked through this experiment over the last year. The other key thing we did was we really needed some new tools as well. Before, we were using Storyline to build courses. We were using spreadsheets for simple project tracking. And some of the challenges we really ran into was with a spreadsheet, it was difficult for us to know the impact when another project came in. If another project with a higher priority needed to push some others back, it was challenging for us to say, okay, well, the other project now can't be delivered until here. It was taking us weeks to kind of build things and put them out. And so a couple of tools that we added on during this process were Microsoft Teams. That is a product through Office 365. It allows for tons of collaboration. So we're putting source files out there. We're meeting through that. It's kind of our center collaboration tool. We also implemented Smartsheet. This is a separate tool that was our project tracking. It allowed us to have more detailed project and task breakdown and be able to switch our projects into Kanban boards, which I'll talk about in a minute, and give us visual ways to work, as well as allocate our people and do good guesstimates. And so when a project came in, a new project came in, we could kind of see when could we get to it and make better decisions about that. Lastly, one of our biggest helpers to getting stuff out the door was Articulate Rise. So Rise is a product that has really revolutionized what we deliver. I know it's not a perfect replacement for Storyline by any means, but for us to be able to very quickly pop onto a website, load a video, add some text, and post it to our LMS, it's just been absolutely revolutionizing for us. Got a question via the chat here. So what was the first tool I mentioned? That was Microsoft Teams. So what does Llama actually really look like? I wanted to share with you guys an overview of the process and what is Agile instructional development. What does that process look like? So here, we started off with the learner personas. I think for many of you, these terms aren't going to be new. And much of this wasn't new to us either. It was just a way to structure it and put it all together. So with the learner personas, we really wanted to take that step back whenever a potential project came or we knew a product release was coming, and ask that question of who really needs to see this. Not just everybody in the world. I'm sure everybody needs to know about the updates, but when it comes to our partners, who is that person that's consuming our content, and what are their motivations, which helps us identify maybe the modality that we might deliver this. And what we found is this was just the first piece to what we needed to work our way through design. So once we identified who this was for, we then have stories. Stories is an agile term that really lets us identify, they may be something like objectives for a course. These may be bigger than an objective, though. These may be more broad, identifying markers for somebody's skill set that they need. So, while defining stories is something that wouldn't necessarily equate exactly to course objectives, oftentimes they pretty closely align. Where I'm saying, as a blank, I want to blank, so I can blank. So perhaps, as an Excel guru, I want to customize pivot tables so I can analyze my monthly KPIs. Now that's a pretty broad statement. And that might be the reason why we need to do the training. But oftentimes what you're going to see here are these this learner personas and these defining stories. These pieces actually come together in your analysis session. Your first analysis session with your stakeholders, and if you've got your SMEs in there, great. Those are the people who are writing these things, not you. You get to provide the framework and the structure and say why you need these things, but ultimately it's up to the stakeholders and the subject matter experts to tell you who and what it is they need to do. Another piece to this here when we're working with personas and stories is that next level of, all right, well, how do I design to this? Maybe this is too broad a sweeping statement. This is where Kathy Moore's action mapping comes into play. When you identify personas and set these stories, you can then take these stories, put them into an action mapping, and that's what's going to build how you're going to design this and ultimately lead to that next one, which is estimating. So when it came to what our team was doing, we actually systematically we pieced these apart. And we said, okay, learner personas. We know these, we have an idea of these. We got together and agreed what they were. For us, our personas don't change a whole lot. For you, you may have a wide variety of personas. So we just tackled that as a team first. We said, all right, this is a lot. Let's look at personas and see who these people are, and then we can pull from our persona bank when we have a training opportunity come up. And then we have the ability to apply these, who have that bank, apply them, and talk about stories. So we took some of our in-flight projects and some of our new projects starting, and we looked at how would I define a story for this and kind of practice this. We did a little bit of even reverse engineering of some of our in-flight projects, those that were going on right now, to say, all right, if I had defined stories, what would this have looked like? It was really great practice for the team. Once we got through those pieces, then came estimation. This was truly a new creature for us. We had this sense of when a project came in, I know it would take 6 weeks to do. But as far as saying, okay, well, what can I do in 6 weeks, and who all needs to be involved, and what other pieces do I need to pull in, and what if this needs to change? How does that impact that 6 weeks? And it started to become difficult to answer questions and make changes to a project and expect who was doing what when we didn't really know. And that's really what it came down to. So the big thing with estimation, especially when it comes to Agile here, is small pieces. Most of our work, we estimate anywhere from 1 to 8 hours and no more. There's usually a set increment, and this really helped us. We had a pick list based on the Fibonacci sequence of here's how many hours something could take. And we estimate it thinking about the unknowns, and we make sure that we do small things. If we wrote a task down, like create videos for the introduction, and we were putting something like 30 hours of effort or 34 hours of effort on that, it becomes really hard to know how accurate that is when it's such a big bucket. And if you're curious more about the estimation, in the resources of this deck, I have a link to some videos for Llama, and Torrance Learning's done a great job of talking about estimation and giving kind of a picture of that. The estimates really allowed us to say, oh, this is really how long it's going to take, and pulling together the different tasks, which then brings us to our visible work planning. So just because I'm estimating and tracking this doesn't really mean I still understand who's working on what when. That's where we went to, we did try using for a while a couple of different tools like Asana. There are some other board ones out there. Microsoft also has a couple of like Microsoft Tasks, and that worked for some of our things, but it didn't really give us the big picture and the detailed picture, which we needed both, which is why we landed on Smartsheet. And that allowed us to have a project template, build out the project, write out the tasks, do the estimations, assign them to people, and then be able to see who was working on what when, and actually see true allocations. So I know if my team is 100% booked for the next 2 weeks, when something comes in, I actually have a screen I can go to and say, all right, it doesn't even look like I can get started with this for another 3 weeks. The visible work planning also keeps everybody accountable to their work instead of just shuffling things around. One of the challenges we sometimes had was when new priorities came in, other projects would get pushed and get pushed and get pushed. And then due dates were difficult to manage and stay on top of. So when we have this visual way of getting in here, this let us really see what was going on. So if a side project squeaked its way in, we could see where maybe we needed to jump in and help somebody out, or delay another piece, or even ask why are we doing something. The other thing with this, and along that we changed process-wise, was we implemented weekly kind of sprint reviews, sprint planning, where our team, we always had this sense of let's check in on our projects, but now each week we get together and we look at these boards, we look at our project statuses and our allocations, and we say, okay, here's what I've got going on, here's my roadblocks, and then here's what I need next, or here's what I'm going to be doing next. Sprint planning also allowed us to slot in things like content management. Just because we put something out there doesn't mean it's 100% perfect, or doesn't mean it needs to change over time. So as we get feedback, we also use Smartsheet to log feedback items onto a content management board. And during our sprint planning, we work to make sure we're getting these in so they don't pile up into this giant mountain of changes to our different courses. Now, we primarily meet once a week with 2 other touch points to just quickly get in. And those in the Agile industry, and if you do Llama, there's this concept of daily stand-ups, just literally a stand-up meeting, and we're a half virtual team, so we do this online, where you touch base. You say, here's what I did yesterday, here's what I'm doing today, and here's what I plan to do tomorrow, whether or not I have any roadblocks. So it's great for everyone to really be able to stay on top of things. Yeah, thank you, Anthony. It's super quick and effective to do something like that, so that, for me, I also have a project manager role. I'm checking in like, hey, what's up with this? How are we doing on this? I don't need to interrupt somebody's day for that, because I know I have a stand-up meeting coming to tell me. The last piece here of Llama, and I talked about this term iterations, just meaning chunks that you are delivering. So when you do this, the key to it is not only to look at providing iteration 1, but get a sense and even a schedule for iteration 2 and iteration 3 and maybe iteration 4 until you get to what would be considered a final product. Our challenge is that our software updates so frequently with new features and functionality, enhancements, new screens, lots of cool things happening in the product. For us, means lots of updates. So we may provide a first iteration, a second iteration, and then we as a team had to decide where was the line between this project is done. So our project could never be done if things kept changing. So we set a line that said, here's where a project is done. We're live. This is good. And any other changes going forward are content management pieces, things we put on our content management board. And one of the big things that we did for that, and this is what works for us, is we set a time limit. We said if we looked at something that came in and it would take more than 8 hours to work on, it became a project. It became a next iteration, a bigger thing. Anything under 8 hours, so 8 hours and under, was considered content management and a small change that we would do. We would tweak whatever that thing was. And this applies too sometimes for our processes. If we have certain processes or things that aren't working, we'll add that to our content board. It's a part of who we are and what we do. And then we assign that maybe sometimes to the team, set some time together and talk through that to decide what that might be, that change. Iterations, I got that the kind of last bullet point too. They're easier to estimate. It goes back to that smaller chunks of things. A first iteration for a course, regardless of whether you're delivering an e-learning or you're delivering video or knowledge-based articles, a great first iteration might be something delivered via PowerPoint, a storyboard. The idea of that being usable is that you could have a subject matter expert pop in to this PowerPoint and run a live session off of it using their expertise and the information you have in your PowerPoint deck, aka, if you're using that for storyboarding. That might be an MVP, a first iteration for you guys. Then the second iteration might be, okay, now we're going to make a guide. And now we're going, or maybe job aids or videos or the first RISE course. You get to ask that cool what if when you're not so focused on the big bang end project and you're focused on the little things like, okay, step one will be this. And then step two, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? And then we can add this on step three. Another huge thing about these iterations is that if there is an issue, we're not coming to the end of the build of our bus and saying, oh, change everything, the steering wheel's on the wrong side of the vehicle. We're catching issues earlier. So even if I've shown people something along the way and then they finally get this product, they say, oh, you know, actually we totally forgot about this user role that also needs to have this. And Robin put in the chat, absolutely, it's really nice to have ongoing approval in place here so that everybody's on the same page. Whether that is along the way, so your learner personas and your stories and your action mapping, you can put that all into a design document and go, okay guys, here's what iteration one's going to look like. Let's sign off, do your work, show iteration one, sign off on that, and move on to your next iteration. So what were our benefits from doing this? Our stakeholders were much more involved. I mentioned something that we haven't really been successfully able to do, which is balancing our regular work with really being deeply embedded in having the right channels and connections directly to our product development team. Having them make time in their sprints to help with training development was a massive support for us to be able to get things together as quickly as they needed to. Also, because we went agile, and another benefit is that we actually started speaking the same language as our development people. We started using the same terms and we could understand one another a little bit more, and ultimately training became that bridge between product and our external users as well. And while, as I mentioned earlier, it does not guarantee you're getting more work done faster, we actually are. It's kind of a cool side benefit where when we're doing these smaller deliveries, we are able to put out modules or pieces or job aids to satisfy certain areas, and we are getting things done faster. When I asked the team, I said, hey, you know, what are you thinking of this? Like, you know, actually, I feel like I can get more done. I feel like I can get things done faster, because now we have this process that allows me to say that this piece here, this is okay, and this is good to put out for our first piece. Also, this impact, and I mentioned that because it was one of our struggle areas, was juggling our projects. We have anywhere for our team between 12 and over 20 projects going on at once for our small team. And so being able to see when something comes in or something bumps up in priority, how that's going to impact the team who's working on other projects, being able to shift our people and do a quick all hands on deck when something comes in, and understanding that, okay, the projects we were working on here, we'll still deliver them in maybe another day or two. We're able to make better decisions on those things when they come in, and better prioritize that, and also better communicate with our stakeholders when something comes up. So the end result here, we did it. We're here. We're doing great. We have a lot more to do. This is software. We're not done. We won't ever be done. It's a kind of a great feeling to have. There's always going to be work for us. And for the first time ever, just this past January, and the few months leading up to that, we delivered training to our audiences, our key audiences, about this new big Goliath product, which is beautiful and wonderful and exciting, to our internal teams and those who needed it along the way. As the product was being developed, we were able to develop training and release it, making that available. So once the official release happened for us, we actually could say, hey guys, go in the LMS. We have some great training options for you to learn about this piece, and learn about the overview. There were really great things. So instead of releasing 6 to 8 weeks after, that we now had something right away. So definitely our work isn't over yet, but we've got some good things to do, and we continue to evaluate what's working for us and what's not, and tweak it to how we work and the things that we see. So I hope there were some good tidbits in here for you guys. As I mentioned, we'll make sure you get this slide deck. I have 2 slides at the back with resources for books and publications, articles, etc. Some of those links to videos out there. All the stuff on this last slide is all free. The books, of course, you'd probably have to purchase these on Amazon or somewhere. But there's tons and tons of resources out there, and I hope that sharing my story with you guys, you're able to see maybe one way where you could go from facing something so challenging, like a lot of us here are even facing today. How can I possibly do instructor-led to how can I do instructor-led to how can I do this virtual? You can do this. So I want to encourage you with that. So that's the end of my piece here and what I wanted to share with you guys. We do absolutely have time for questions. So before we end, feel free to either add some more questions here in the chat or shout out on the phone here.
Thank you, Noelle. This was really informative and very helpful. I teach in a traditional classroom, well, right now I teach online because of the changes. And I've introduced my business students to ADDIE, and I think I'm going to introduce them to Llama because I think that is a nicer way for them to do smaller chunks, and it lets me verify understanding before they move forward. So thank you for that. Who has questions? I see iPhone guest. I don't know who you are, but
hi, Robin. This is Abhishek. That was my hands raised.
Awesome. I appreciate you doing that. What is your question?
Sure. First of all, before asking the question, thank you very much. I'm actually in the middle of such a program, so this will be very, very helpful. One question though is, and I'm sure you have faced this and you have successfully come out of it. When we talk about Agile, and it's good that in your presentation you've kind of used the same terminologies using stories, sprints, and things like that. However, because they do it in story, there will be Scrum meetings, there will be product owners. The challenge that I'm facing is I'm getting into different meetings, and some of the meetings are useful. Some of the meetings, there's a lot of wastage in terms of getting information, keeping me updated around what are the different smaller projects that are going on.
Yes.
So how do you tackle that?
Yes, Abhishek, that's a great question. And that is very much a thing we tackled with. When I mentioned that we got involved and embedded with product, we had to figure out where our sweet spot was with that. We tried to attend different, we have about 8 to 10 different teams in the product area, and they all have their own sprint reviews. And we thought, how in the world are we going to be on each of their reviews to stay on top of this? And so one of the things we did is we also have a documentation team. That's how we're structured internally with product. And so we would look at the sprint reviews for our documentation team, because that told us what was ready to be documented. So therefore, what's ready to build some training on. And honestly, we can't build training without something. So that documentation was key for us. And I'll say that helped us, but we still had a challenge with identifying what really applied to us and what did we need to really care about. And that's where our product owners came in, and really our translators, our person to tell us, here's what's important coming from my team, here's what's key and what I'd like to see. So they became a stakeholder in our courses, and they were the ones that made the time to make sure that their subject matter experts, the people building, had stuff together for us, and they delivered that to us.
Great. That's a good, that's a good way. I'll try to implement it straight away.
Mm-hmm.
And before I have a question, can I quickly ask one more question, if Robin allows me to do that?
Of course.
Okay. So this is, again, you mentioned about RISE, use of RISE, articulate RISE page, and I keep using that in my strategies. But, there are two types of stakeholders that, we encounter in such kind of a transformation program. One is your program side, who is more technical, more functional. Mm-hmm. And then you will have your stakeholders from the learning side, who would look into user experience, the best learning strategies. And, and then, we as transformation enablers, we kind of create a balance. And that's when we use tools like RISE and things like that, mm-hmm. so that we can manage the learner expectation at the same time, the functional expectation. But somewhere I always struggle, either side, they are not convinced that, this is the right balance, because the learning side always wants the best user experience, while the functional side wants you to be more involved and ensure more technical or system information is going into your training program.
Sure.
So how do you create that balance?
Sure. That's also an excellent question. We have that wide variety of audiences as well, whether it's an end user or management or our sales team, to be able to even take the message of our new product and put that out there. And ultimately, what we did for most of our stuff is we had two RISE files. We have a functional RISE file and a technical RISE file. And we put both of these together into a course in our LMS. And that allowed us to kind of segregate that information, especially if a technical person was really only wanting to jump to that. And that way we introduced the functional, and we said, everybody take the functional, including the technical people, because it tells you the what. And then the technical would say the how, and provide the how and get into the nitty gritties. And then from there, you can decide whether you want to launch them together in the LMS in the same course, separate courses, and link them. There's different ways that you could definitely deliver it. Another method that we've tried and has mostly worked out is when we put it in the same RISE file. There is, out on eLearning Heroes, a really great article about working with RISE and controlling the functionality in it. So getting rid of the left-hand navigation pane and instead navigating inside of the RISE course. And so we did something like a faux adaptive course where not everyone needed to know about every area of the solution. And some people needed technical, some didn't. It was an interesting challenge of how do we put a course out there for everybody. And so we built in navigation buttons to say, yeah, I need this, go to the next lesson, or no, I don't need this, and I'll skip it and move on to the next thing, all within the same RISE course. So we've got those kind of two different ways that we do it, depending on our content.
Ooh,
Great stuff. Great stuff. Can you share that link with us while you share the presentation? That would be an interesting thing to see. I've never seen Rise using customized menu. So that would be a great read.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's sort of, it's like, it's a little bit faking it, but it works pretty well. I will say the one challenge we found with doing that is inside of Rise, you can go in and search the entire course when you're inside the course, and that's great. But what if I'm a technical person and I need to just learn how to go configure this one area of the software, and it was released on, version whatever. I have to know what version it's on. I have to go into the version course and I have to search for the thing instead of just going into the LMS and finding the thing. So, we've run into a bit of a challenge there, and we're looking at how best to address that without flooding our LMS with a million different learning objects. But yeah, I will. I'll make sure we get that particular link included in the resources.
Awesome, thank you. Kendra has a question.
Hello.
Hey.
Sorry, I'm eating lunch, so I'm stuffing my face. First of all, thank you for this presentation. I've been in instructional design for going on 10 years. I've never heard of this before, so I feel like a complete, I don't know, idiot, I guess.
I was there a year ago, so same place.
I'm sorry?
I was there a year ago.
Well, I just want to make sure that I understood you on the 8-hour thing. So you said if it's under 8 hours, just add the content to your LMS. Is that what you're saying?
So, so if it's under 8 hours, it goes to our content management board as like a card or a task, just some sort of a task that says, hey, somebody needs to go fix this.
Oh, okay.
It could be a broken question. It could be a typo, or it could be an update to a best practice that we have to go do, or updates to links, things like that. It's the little stuff that usually piles up but doesn't take a lot of time.
Okay, and then so the 8 hours or more is?
So if it's over 8 hours, we turn that into a project.
Okay.
Where we do this process. We take a look at it, we estimate it out, we assign it. It becomes a bit more of an undertaking for us, but ultimately it's probably because it's resulting in a new iteration of a course. There's something big about this course that's changing.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Thank you very much. Any other questions that people have or comments?
So this came up in the chat, and I just want to have it here on the audio as well. That Llama, if you've never heard about it before, it is something that Torrance Learning is evangelizing worldwide. And it's newer. It's been around for somewhere around 7 years or so. So if you haven't heard about it, don't feel bad. So it's yes, it's just for us, it was the way that made sense.
Can I ask one more question since we have time? So one of the other questions I keep getting, getting asked is, or rather an expectation from the customer when we say, okay, we are going from ADDIE to a SAM, or we are going, we are trying to align our training strategy with your product development strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The immediate reaction from the customer, or the expectation from the customer is, I'm going to give them a solution which will be more cost effective, which will take lesser effort. But eventually when we run the program, it's not always the case. So how do we manage that expectation?
Are you talking about the cost of the change in process, or the cost of the product you're delivering?
I'm talking about the cost of the entire training delivery.
Okay. For me, I I do a lot of internal things, and so cost for us is more about how much it costs us to build something, and if we sell training, kind of put it out there. I mean,
or maybe effort. If you can talk in terms of effort, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're doing your estimating, one of the things that helps us in that regard, because when you have those first meetings with the customer, and you are getting the project scope, you're doing all that analysis, you're coming back with the stories and the personas and all of that. That's you can estimate at that level. Some people need an estimate before that, and that's where it's really high level and really comes with experience of those types of projects. And so coming back and justifying, that's a big question I hear a lot out in the industry. How do I justify my budget? How do I justify my cost, my hours, how long it's going to take? And this particular model helps you come up with options. There's that, go back to that what if. So option one says, if I need to get this out with this budget and this amount of time, here's what this is going to look like. And then option two says, all right, now give me a little more time, a little more budget, and here's what we can do. Whether you're just giving basic options or you're explaining it, here's what we will do, here's what you're going to have, and then if you want to continue on, which is another thing, you may get past iteration one and people love it and they're happy with it and you're done. You may find then if you know we got it, it's working okay, we really would like XYZ on top of this, there's your iteration two. Smaller chunks lead to more cost-effective pieces as well.
Great, thank you.
Any final closing thoughts to share with us, Noel?
Gosh, I can't stress enough that you guys, I hope you'll research if you're looking at how this might impact your work or just learning more about it, about all the different ways. Llama is not the only way, it's the way that worked well for us. And there's a lot of stuff out there about going agile. Don't get too bogged down by the industry terms and all of that. But I think some of these resources here are going to help you do that translation and help you make that decision on whether or not this is a good fit for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for today. I appreciate your willingness to lead this session. We'll get the slide deck posted with the resources. The recording, Providing Technology Cooperates, will also be posted. And if anyone is interested, willing, can be blackmailed, whatever it takes, into being willing to host a session, please let's talk. Let's see what people are interested in learning more about. Again, thank you all. Have a grand and glorious day, being all alone in your homes.
And thank you both of you, Robin and Noel, for taking the lead, and Robin for arranging it. I think this group is really going in the right direction.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks everybody.